everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're exploring topic number 2 as it relates to parents and life with a child with diabetes. And this topic is control and safety. And I'm Nicole Johnson, by the way. I didn't introduce myself the first time around. And I've had type 1 diabetes for 20 years this year. So I'm not quite where Joe is. But remember diagnosis very, very vividly. You know, everything about diabetes is scary. Being a parent and handling this life and death situation has got to be incredibly terrifying. A moment doesn't go by that you're not worried about some element of this disease in your child's life. So it makes sense why parents often get very concerned about control, whether control means controlling your child's environment or controlling their blood sugar, and then safety of your child and how do you keep them in the best environments for them. Parents try all kinds of different techniques to help keep their children as safe as possible, but sometimes some of our strategies can backfire on us. And that's sort of where we want to take this portion of the conversation is how do we help our strategies around control and safety be the best strategies for the family and not let them backfire and cause more strife. And later on we're going to talk about family conflict. But let's move to control and safety. So Joe, help us kick this part off. What's the first advice?
So they're great subjects to talk about. I think they're two different things, right? So control's one thing, and as you said, how do I control the environment to make sure that my kid's safe? But also, how do we achieve optimal metabolic control? And how do we make sure that control is a big word in diabetes, you know? If you are a control freak, this is a credible disease for your kid to get because it's the opportunity to have a spiritual growth experience. It is about holding on tight and letting go simultaneously. It's like walking on coals and not getting burnt and sort of maintaining your sense of balance. So my thing for parents in terms of the control department is that your tendency is to want to over-control things because you're afraid that things around diabetes aren't getting done. Or your tendency will be to control for outside influences because there's so much work involved in just maintaining diabetes control. And the idea here is to train parents on the management of this disease well enough so that they can achieve the optimal metabolic control and allow them to be parents as they've been parents in every other area of life, is to not forget that they know how to do things and that for them to use their gut sense about where things are dangerous, where things are not, and to keep the same rules around behavior that apply in every other area of life to diabetes as well. The biggest rule that I think is most important that will help parents, help their kids, and help their kids not feel suffocated is the rule of that parents should treat diabetes behavior like any other active behavior. Like doing homework, like doing your chores, like taking out the garbage. Is it fair to have diabetes? No. Is it fun to have it? No. Do you have to manage it? Yes. And that's where I think a lot of parents lose it and feel sort of afraid and get anxious is when they are seeing that the kid's hemoglobin A1C is not going in the direction that they'd like it to go, despite all of their efforts. My experience is that lectures and sermons don't work that well. That it has more to do with Facebook time and cell phone privileges. And if you want to behave yourself, then you get those privileges. If you want to misbehave, then you get some of those privileges taken away. In addition to all the other stuff about making sure that the kid feels good about himself or herself and praising them and all that kind of stuff. So in the area of control, I think it always comes down to whether the parents feel like the management is under control. And things then sort of open up from there. Safety, I think, is just things that people would just normally think about in terms of safety and making sure that part of the control thing is that they insist that their child act in a responsible fashion for whatever that age is.
Wow. You know, Kathy, it seems that oftentimes it's very difficult for parents to figure out that fine line of how controlling should they be and when is it nagging. You know, How have you seen, or what strategies have you seen that are most effective for helping parents?
Yeah, and I sometimes the wording is used, when do parents let go?
Mm-hmm.
And I personally don't like that wording, because I don't think as a parent you ever let go. I think you're always with your child no matter what age they are. So I like to talk to parents about changing from maybe being the manager to the supervisor or the consultant, and using that as sort of a way to think about how you hand things over, how you let your child take on a little bit more of that management. And in the literature, there's some research that has looked at something called collaborative decision making, and using collaborative decision making with individuals with chronic health conditions. And in particular, they've done some research with kids with type 1 diabetes. And the idea behind collaborative decision making is you as the parent role play. You model what decision making looks like. And so, for example, let's say you're out to dinner and your child wants a particular item on the menu. And you talk about, well, if you order this, here might be some of the consequences. Here's what you need to think about. So let's see if that would be a good decision or not. And going through the steps of what decision making looks like helps that child then take on some of that responsibility later on. And I think it's helpful for the parent in gaining trust in their child's ability to hand things over to them a little bit at a time, but it also builds the competence of the child in terms of decision making. So that's one particular strategy, and with the collaborative decision making, the idea behind that is you model that, you role play that when you have time to make the decisions. So it's not something to engage in a crisis moment where you can't stop and say the what ifs. So you find teachable moments and use those.
So Joe, on that topic of the collaborative decision making, can you guys role play or give a diabetes example for parents of teenagers?
Yeah, totally. You want to talk about
Sure.
driving?
Okay.
All right, fine. So that was so nice of you and Dad to get me that car, and I'll see you guys later. I'm going to be gone for a few days. I'm hanging out with my friends. We're going to be going down to the beach for a couple of days.
Now, wait a minute, Joe. We need to stop and think about this. So.
But you guys told me that I could have the car and I could use it to go wherever I wanted to go.
Well, we are allowing you to have a car, but I don't think we ever said you could use it whenever you wanted to go and whenever you think it's time to go. So let's talk about now your diabetes.
Okay.
What are some things that you need to think about to prepare for if you're going to go on a trip? What do you need to do before you even get into the car? What do you need to have with you?
I promise I'll check my blood sugar every time before I get in the car. But I also think and I'm already prepared, I have a separate little hand suitcase that's going to be for my diabetes supplies. I brought enough syringes, enough in case my pump goes down. I have cartridges, infusion sets. I have 2 bottles of strips. That'll be more than I'll need for it. That'll be fine. And I have extra snacks in case we run out of money.
Okay, what do you think, Mom?
I don't know. Who's going with you in the car? Are your friends going with you in the car?
Yes.
How many friends? I don't want 3 friends with you in the car. They're too distracting.
Oh.
Do your friends know what to do in case you get a low?
Yeah, all of the people that are coming with me actually are my homies, and they know how to take care of me.
Why don't you let them drive?
In case I have a low.
Oh, now we're out of control. He's got his homies with him. I love it, though. I just wanted to see how that would work, like the dialogue.
But this is how it goes, and I
Yeah.
think the most
Right.
important piece is not to give up when the conversation seems like it's getting hard.
Yeah.
And what Kathy did for me, which was great, was that she said, now hold it, wait a minute.
Yeah.
She didn't discount what I was saying, but she said, I want to bring up some other things. So it was a way in which I still was in the conversation. And I had a sense of hope about it, which I think is what you want to make sure that the kids have.
Yeah.
The only other thing that I would say is that on some level, though, I think it's the parent's responsibility to make decisions about things.
Yes, I agree.
I don't think that there's any parent that sits down with the kids and does collaborative decision-making around whether or not you're going to go to school. So that there are some
Right.
bottom lines that just parents know because they're parents and they're older. But I think the collaborative piece comes as you're negotiating and navigating stages of change.
Right,
Yes.
right,
Where you're coming on to different things. How are we gonna work this out?
right.
Yes.
And that's an excellent point, because I was just gonna add that in the studies that they've done, they always refer to the seriousness of the decisions.
Yes.
And so that has to be weighed in terms of that collaborative decision-making process, exactly.
Yes.
Well, you know, they're going crazy online here with comments and questions, and one of the big questions seems to me is about this topic. It's ideas about when your young person forgets to bolus. How do you deal with that? Because mom and dad, with the control that's rightfully so, wanting them to have that insulin in their body to save their lives, how do you manage?
This comes exactly to what we're talking about in the collaborative stuff. It's
Yeah.
like, so the kid says, or it comes to the point at which the kid says, I'm gonna be bolusing by myself from now on. If I were that parent, I would say, okay, that sounds great. Okay, what are your criteria for when and how and that kind of stuff? And your father and I, or your mother and I, or I, as your mother or father, need to know what's gonna happen if you forget to do that.
Right.
Because as the quid pro quo, for your taking more responsibility, I will back off a little bit. But I will not abdicate my role as your parent.
Right.
And we need to work on this thing here together and see how that's gonna come out, because I'd love for you to bolus yourself, but you've been forgetting all the time. And every time I remind you, you say, stop nagging, you know? So the other piece to that is that I think that's where the parents need to make decisions, is about, we as your parents want to give you more responsibilities, you'll be bolusing for yourself, but we think that if you forget the bolus and we catch you, you lose 20 minutes of Facebook. I hate you, you're stupid. That kind of stuff. That's how it usually goes, right?
Now,
And I don't know, maybe the parents,
parents,
we should,
let's get you to weigh in on this.
I met Joe about 6 years ago, right after my son was diagnosed, at a little community center support group meeting. And one of the things he said was, and I can't remember exactly how it went, Joe, so correct me how I say it, but it was like, you're not gonna let your kid get in the car and go drinking and driving. And you're gonna lay the hammer down on that kid. It will not happen, or you lose your car, you lose your phone, you're locked down. You're never gonna leave the house again. That's the mentality that you have to take on some of this diabetes education and collaborative discussion with the kids.
Yes.
Some things you have to lay the hammer down on and
That's
say,
right.
look, if you don't bolus, you're not gonna eat that. Where you can also say, well, I tell you what, you can have one cupcake if you bolus for it, and you bolus for it properly, but you can't have 2 cupcakes. I wouldn't give you 2 cupcakes if you were
Yes.
non-diabetic,
Yes.
because you're gonna get fat.
Yeah.
So you have to make the proper decisions on what you're fighting for. Bolusing is, you're not gonna go drink driving, you're gonna bolus.
Right.
Can you have 2 cupcakes? Well, maybe we can negotiate and have 1 cupcake. So it's a give and take, and it's a parenting skill.
Right.
But some things you have to be locking down on.
But if you think about that in that process, you're teaching your child
Exactly.
how to make those decisions.
And how to
So,
eat
and how to
proper.
set boundaries.
And how to bolus and how to
Exactly.
pre-bolus.
And I
Exactly.
tell the parents that they should use the same rules about behavior and misbehavior in diabetes as they use in anything else. If you lose privileges by misbehaving in homework or chores or being disrespectful, then you can lose privileges by misbehaving in diabetes.
Exactly.
I'm at
It's
a
not saying you're a bad person, it's just saying
Right.
you're not behaving.
I'm at a different place with Peter because he was diagnosed at 23, like I said, and he's 25. I don't want to control my son. He's too old. But at the same time, he needs to have my guidance, but at the same time, he needs to take personal liability not to live that crazy lifestyle that he's living as a young man, in college, and he's a chef, and they're constantly, he has to modify his life to accommodate the diabetes. And I can't follow him around, and I don't want to, and I get really frustrated and mad when he calls, oh, I don't feel good, Mom. I said, what'd you do this week? Oh, I went to a concert, we drank a lot of beer. Don't tell me. If you're gonna torture me, don't tell me. Because I just lay there shaking for the rest of the day. But, I don't want to give up on him. So I'm feeling my way through that minefield right now.
No, but I think that that's the big difference between and that's why it's so important to get these things established before your kids leave home. right? Now, your son was in a different situation.
Right.
He was already gone by the time when he was diagnosed. But whatever kids learn early on in their adolescence are going to be the habits that they take with them when they leave home. The collaborative negotiating process and discussion and the discipline and all this stuff should happen before they leave home. It shouldn't happen, like Kathy was saying, the night before they leave. Right. Oh, here's how we
You're
want you to
right.
do it, yeah.
You know, a question has popped up on here, and we've moved from the control and safety into talking about all kinds of life situations and environments, from the driving to going on trips to forgetting to bolus. But the team here online wants to know about drinking. What are some specific things that you all can recommend about drinking, diabetes, in your teens or young adults?
I don't mean to put anyone on the spot, but I'm curious about what Sam, because Sam was the one who brought it up, so I'm just curious how you guys are handling it now. When it's,
I drink a lot of beer.
I
My son, he's 13, he's
I
hopefully
know,
he's
but
not.
Please, no.
how have you and your wife thought about handling it when the issue comes up?
We've talked about it because we know it's coming up. I mean, he's going to go off to college. My older son's 19. He just went off to college. It's college life. I did it. I still drink beer. I mean, it's going to come. So it's the education process. I can't start educating him now at 13, but as we get closer to that time, it's going to be discussed. We're going to do the research. I don't know exactly how. I went out with a diabetic friend, the other woman, and she's like, oh, I can have some vodka because it stabilizes my blood sugar. So I didn't know that, but
Understood. So the discussion that you're going to have with your son Joe is different than the one that you're going to have, that you had with your older one,
yeah.
because of the diabetes.
Yeah, we'll have to acknowledge it up front, I believe,
Yeah.
Because it will happen, and if we don't address it, then it'll be too late, like you're saying.
I addressed it with Robert before he left for college, because it is a reality of life. And he's my brainiac child, and he's very methodical and logical. And he didn't drink before he was diagnosed. You know, he was a kid in high school, and now Peter, the one I keep talking about, he's the one that's giving me a little bit more stress and worry, because he keeps thinking that he can handle it. He wants to keep up with his buddies. You can't keep up with your buddies. Sure, you can have a beer, but you can't drink 10 beers, you know, because then you're as a mother, I think, oh my gosh, he's going to be incoherent. He's not going to test correctly. He can under-medicate or over-medicate. He could have dead in the bed syndrome, and these are all things that I actually tell him, and it breaks my heart to tell him, this is what could happen, son. But I would be very remiss if I did not tell him what could happen, and if I didn't encourage him to educate himself when it comes to alcohol. And then when it gets to the point where the alcohol is taking over the diabetes is not your problem, alcohol is your problem. So it's like Joe was saying, you have to take everything as a life situation, not just a diabetes situation.
Yeah, no, and I think when I'm working with kids and families around the issue of drinking, I'll ask the parents, I'm happy to talk with your child about how different alcohol and different drugs work on your blood sugar. But I want your permission before I talk with them to talk about it, because I'm not talking with them as a way of telling them to do it. I'm talking with them about the impact of it physiologically, so that if they get stupid, they can make a smart decision.
Right.
And so that they'll know what to do as things happen. But that they need to have, they're armed with knowledge. And so my goal in working with kids who are getting to that age, young adults, is to teach them and talk to them about everything that alcohol and drugs do. And then, once you have that knowledge there, and you are guaranteeing that you're going to have someone who knows what to do in case you lose it,
Yes.
with
Yes.
you,
Right.
right? With the person with diabetes, it's very important to have a homie who's got your back around this stuff, around diabetes as well as the drinking stuff. So those are the things that come up.
That's a question that's popped up here on our feed, is, you know, the influence of friends. I mean, these all contribute to this safety and control discussion.
Totally.
The influence of friends with alcohol. How do you help the young person and help their friends understand about the diabetes?
It's like Joe said, it's all about personal liability. What would you tell them about drinking? Number one, you shouldn't be out getting snockered anyway, you know, if you're underage. And if you are, your friends should have your back and they should be aware. That's all you can tell them.
And I think also the thing about friends that influence, you know what I mean? I think that's a more general life issue. If there's bad, you know what? God sends kids down and tells kids to make trouble for the parents, right? That's the kid's job. And parents' job is not to let that happen. And parents are given by God an instinct that is totally uncanny and is more sophisticated and accurate than a radar. And it knows when you're in trouble or when you're doing things that you shouldn't do. And it's the same thing when parents know about your friends, you know? That's a general life question that needs to come up, that needs to be discussed about, I'm not comfortable or we're not comfortable about the friends that you keep with. This is not okay, you know? Which then comes back to control and safety.
It does,
again.
it does.
Yes.
And you know, I want to answer one more question that was here on the feed. Some parents are talking about how they don't know what to say and they don't know the information about alcohol and
Where
drugs.
can they go? Where can they go is the question.
Where can they go? Where is that information? What is it that they need to know about the interaction with diabetes?
I would say the first person they should go to is their diabetes nurse educator and doctor. That would be the first place to go. And preface it with, I need you to help me have this conversation.
Right.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
great.
Or then, children with diabetes, and go to the website and get online in the young people's discussion area. There's plenty of information there. There'll be 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. People are talking about this stuff.
You're
Or to
right,
other
yeah.
parents online and stuff like that if they
What about
don't know.
your group, Nicole?
Yeah, we talk about alcohol and diabetes a lot with the young adult groups, the students with diabetes. And so we even made them cards of here's how many carbs
Yep.
are in beer and wine,
Yeah.
and here's how many are in liquor. And it's eye-opening. So all that's free and online as well.
And I think that if parents are uncomfortable about bringing up subjects like this, then they need to go to that mental health person that Kathy
Absolutely.
was referring to, or the school psychologist, or somebody in school to say, you know, I'm a parent and I need to have this discussion. I don't think I would have had it had my child not had diabetes, but now I'm finding myself compelled to have it. Would you be able to help me script it a little bit, you know? Yeah.
Oh, I'm getting signals. You know, there's some questions about camps. And there are too many, and they've been rolling back and forth on here. But some people are talking about the efficacy of camp in helping with this control and safety type of discussion. Have you had
The diabetic
experience
camps?
sending your kids to camp?
My son has done a couple of diabetic camps. I don't think the goal of the camps is so much in education, and definitely they're not involved with drinking. But
Thank goodness.
the diabetic camps are more geared at letting diabetic kids hang out with diabetic kids and relieve some of the isolation that they might feel. My son doesn't know any other diabetic children. He goes to camp, everybody's testing, everybody's doing all that stuff. They can sleep and play, and when they sleep at the camp, there's usually 4 to 5 counselors per 10 kids. It's crazy how many people there. They're pre-med students a lot of times, at least the Florida camps are pre-med students, and there's a lot of physicians, a lot of them come from USF, and they just take care of the kids' diabetes. So the parents have a week off. He did a 7-day one. The parents have a week off, which goes back to, you know, what do we do to get away from that 24-hour
To recharge.
caregiver. So I don't think the camp is the best for education. They're there to mentally adjust the children and the parent. I really think that's what the goal is, because they are good camps and safe camps.
I would disagree just a little bit, not entirely. I've been involved in camps since I was 7 years old, and have worked as a counselor nationally and internationally. The thing that's awesome about camps in the area of drinking and education and stuff like that is that there are many camps that educate very well for how to live with diabetes outside of your sort of normal day experiences. And then there are counselors there. A lot of the camps have counselors that are older that have diabetes. And that's when a lot of my discussions occurred when I was younger. And when the discussions occurred as a counselor myself of talking with kids about drinking, particularly the camps that have a senior section before the CIT thing. So I think in some ways that could be helpful, because there are role models who are there, who are functioning in life, and who seem to be achieving some sense of balance between having a life and managing diabetes. I think that speaks to the issue that you were speaking about, where it makes you feel better.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I think
And that's what I see a little bit of that coming here on the feed, is about relationships and friendships.
Yes. Yep.
it's everything. As a single mother, you know, and I'm cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, neurotic anyway. It's exacerbated, you know, with this problem. So I have like a team of people that I can call in the middle of the night or call during the day and say, you know, I'm having a diabetes moment. And because you have to have your moment. One thing I learned from Children with Diabetes Conference is to give yourself permission to go in a room once a month and cry for 10 minutes. You know, but your friends are medicine. It does take a community and a village to raise a child, and it does to hold a diabetic parent's hand too. You can't do it by yourself unless you will, it's just too depressing.
And I'm friends, I have my friends, you know, the thing that's funny about my friends is that I can get really pissy with them sometimes. You know, they go, "Are you low?" And my first answer is always, "No." You know? But I will tell you something, my friends know me better than I know myself sometimes, and they can tell those signs coming on. So that's why it's good to have friends. And for an emotional perspective, from an emotional perspective, and not feeling isolated, I made friends with a guy by the name of Paul Madden 52 years ago. We're still friends today. You know, we've been friends, Nicole and I, for over 10 years, 12 years now. We've known each other for a while, and it's like, it's been, you know, it helps to stay in the game, because when you lose heart, then your friend who has diabetes or who doesn't have diabetes can come and shore you up and say, get back in the game. This is a marathon, not a 50-yard dash. And you need stations.
If you don't have those immediate friends and you don't have anybody to talk to, the Children with Diabetes website has blogs and groups on there that can really help people to educate and feel
Connected.
feel like a family.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's a lot of layers to the onion of diabetes too, because you get to live with it, and it's part of your life you almost take for granted. It's just part of what you do, and then if you forget about it for a few hours, then you feel guilty because you forgot because you didn't worry enough. And that's when your friends come in and they say, have another beer, relax, it's going to be fine.
Yes.
You know, so those things are important. It's important.
Yes.
Well, let's just wrap our conversation around back to where we started. We started talking about control and safety. One thing we didn't talk much about are environments and where we are and where we live our everyday lives. We talked about experiences of our young people. But is there anything that you would have to offer about choosing the environments that are the safest for your children, or advocating for safe environments?
I would say you create your environment. You have to create your environment. No one's going to hand you a safety net. You have to make it happen like Sam made it happen. You know, and
You have to take advantage of some of the programs. The 504 plan was mentioned
Yes.
earlier
Yes.
that not a lot of people know about.
That's
And
right.
if you don't know about that 504 plan, which is, it's a law that your school is required to abide by to make sure the environment is healthy for your child. And if it's not, you can say, I want this done.
Right. It allows your child to receive those related services that
Right.
they need as a result of the diabetes.
Right.
And again, you know, going back to the school and creating that safe environment, so much of it is the problem solving and communication and collaboration across systems.
Yeah.
So, and that includes the medical system, the family system, the educational system, and getting folks to talk. And getting the child and the adolescent involved in those discussions as well. That's so important for creating a safe school environment.
And also, to add on to what everybody's been saying, is this thing about that it's control and environment and safety, is that up to a point, at a certain point, you can't control how things are afterwards. So do your best up until that point in terms of making things safe, 504, school, working with teachers, working with developing a community of support, that kind of stuff. And then at the end of the day, at some point, there's no preventing people from being stupid. You know, like George Lopez says, there's no shortage of stupid. And people can act very not nice, and environments can act very hostile to people who are different and have different needs. And to fill your kid with love and encouragement and support, and to let them know that there's nothing that they can't do, you know, unless you tell them. And to keep on giving them that message so that when they do bump against the harsh knocks of the outside world, that they'll be able to deal with it in a way that makes them feel okay with themselves. And that it's not, that they're not feeling like it's directed to themselves, you know?
And that speaks to the development of resiliency.
Yes.
So building that resiliency
Yes.
in your kids
Yes.
to know that even if they do hit that wall, they come up against bumps, they might need to step back for a minute, but they can move forward because you've given them the skills and help them to know how to problem solve and make good decisions.
And the extent to which we as adults, parents, are able to form a community of support, that is acting as a role model for the
Absolutely.
kids. They see how we do it, then that's how they learn,
Yep.
you know?
As Nicole said too, take advantage of the programs and of the
Yes.
things that are offered to you. For example, my son was at school and he says, "Mom, I'm so tired, I just don't feel good." And when he was first diagnosed, he says, I just want to go part-time, but he was offered a grant that was only eligible to full-time. But under the American with Disabilities Act, they afforded him that grant to go
There
part-time
you go.
because he
Yep,
registered with
excellent.
the school.
Yep.
So take advantage of every resource that's available to you. It's not shameful, it's not that you're a weak person, it's just that it's not a handout, it's a leg up, if you want to look at it that way.
I like that one.
That's
Yes.
great.
That's
That's
good.
great.
Hey, that's a good way to
Yeah.
wrap this up with a bow.
I like that.
I love it that we ended on the topic of resilience, because although this disease is so tough and it's just dogged every day, and you can feel isolated, you can be concerned about the environment within which your child is living, and you can worry about the type of diabetes management and the type of control you may or may not have on that environment. There is tomorrow, and that's what we have to always remember. And we talked a lot also about relationships and communication. So the key points to take away is making sure that open communication is always a standard in your household, and that's one of the ways to best handle some of the challenges that can circulate around control and safety.